We want to be the cybersecurity training company, not one of the top, just the cybersecurity training company. It happened after I finished my third year at university. So my 4-year degree in cybersecurity management, the third year was a placement year. And I went and worked in a SOC here in London. And it was when I finished that placement year and I was planning what I was going to do for my dissertation, I figured at the time, because there wasn't really any training that I could do, I figured why not do my dissertation on practical cybersecurity training. It was probably being thrown in at the deep end. So for somebody to come in with no prior experience, only 2 years into my degree, in such a technical role with no technical background was so difficult. And I remember asking, is there any training that I can do either at work or personally? And there wasn't anything practical, at least at that point in time. I need this kind of training now in my job, but it doesn't exist. There was training in the industry. So you had obviously 2 main companies at that point in time, which was obviously CompTIA, which was very theory-based, and then you had SANS and GIAC, which is just very expensive. Neither of those were offering practical training at that point. It just either wasn't going to benefit me, or it was too much for the company to invest in what was effectively an intern. So there was nothing else available to me. So the first 2 years of university were just purely university, so that was completely fine. The third year being the placement year, it was just working a 9-to-5 job, so that was fine. But when it started to actually come into effect at the start of fourth year, that's when it got a little bit tricky, because I'm trying to build my dissertation, which takes most of the year, but at the same time trying to kind of build it up more outside of university as well. So it was a difficult year, but I feel like it just had to be done at that point. No, to be here in a central London office, just never pictured it. What started off was a small idea to give back to the industry just took off because there was such big demand for it. And now we've got almost 50 people all over the world. We're training some of the biggest companies in the world. It's just, never thought it'd be like this. But it wasn't very good. The first version, when it can legally be considered a company, was just after my final year. So that's when we actually got the company registered. We started getting things like an accountant, a bookkeeper, all the things you actually need to run a business. The very first version of it was just me. It was me for about the first year. And I think the first thing I needed was a way to deliver the content that I was writing. So it was just a WordPress website. And then I was just using like WordPress plugins to do like the payments, to do the actual LMS, the learning management system. There was no corporate email. It was just, I think at that point we were just using Discord to speak with students and customers. So it was just probably as basic as you could possibly get. It was a website and a shop. And yeah, it was just me and a dream trying to do something bigger. I think initially it was a community because the name Security Blue Team came from, and this was a precursor to the company, was I created, and this is back when I was in the SOC in my third year, is I created 2 subreddits on Reddit. There was Security Blue Team, and then there was Security Red Team. And they were just, at that point, it was just meant to be a community to share resources, like somewhere that I wish I had when I was working in the SOC. So it was very much community first. I never went into it with the intent to run it as a business. And it was kind of born from Reddit. And that's where, the initial version of the courses were shared for free to see if there's any interest and help other people. And that's where obviously the name came from as well. So yeah, it was born on Reddit as a community. When it was first starting to be commercialized and I was actually trying to push products to generate revenue, to grow the business, to do bigger things, that was when COVID was kind of in full swing. So obviously I left university in 2020. My final year was impacted by COVID. So a lot of people were at home anyway, which is really good to do training. Remote work became a thing. People were trying to change careers. IT was just a very attractive space right then. So because everybody was sat at home and they were doom scrolling Instagram and LinkedIn and stuff, yeah, it was just relevant timing. Growing up, I think I was quite fortunate in the fact that I had a household where we always seemed to have kind of the latest gadgets, right? So I had my own gaming computer when I was quite young. We had, games consoles, we had phones, we had just kind of random gadgets, cameras, things like that. So there was always that kind of interest in technology because I was always around it. Started my A levels. I think at the time I was doing some kind of like crazy mix. It was like history, chemistry, maths, and IT, which I'm not sure how they go together, but 17-year-old me thought they did. And the first year I failed horrendously. So I didn't even know this was a thing in the UK education system, but I got U's, which is for ungradable, for history, chemistry, and maths. So it was so bad it wasn't even an F, it was a U. But IT, I got a merit in, so it's pass merit distinction. And I just really struggled with that education. It was so intense, so formal, which my brain, it just wouldn't engage with it. So I ended up leaving, and that's when I went to go to college in the next town over, and I did an IT diploma, which was a 2-year program. So I did that, and it was all kind of generic IT, a bit of networking, a bit of design, kind of lots of different things put together. And then one of the modules we did there was cybersecurity, and it was very brief, but it was enough to kind of show me, this is really cool, right? It's hackers and defenders and viruses and firewalls. And I was kind of like, well, this is really interesting. So ended up speaking with the lecturer that was teaching us that and said, what kind of careers are there in cybersecurity? And we kind of talked through it for a bit. And then he mentioned that, why don't I go to university and do cybersecurity? The 2 universities that I applied for was Chester and Bournemouth. And I ended up going to Bournemouth. And they offered me this, I think because the program was either in its first or second year, the cybersecurity management program. So they were offering, bursaries, and being 18 and offered money to go to university, not much, but enough, was really, really interesting. So that's kind of how I got into it. Household with tech, gaming, photography, and then obviously going through college and then going to university that way. So that's kind of how my educational backstory went. So when I started in the SOC on that industrial placement year, I worked as a tier 1 security analyst, tier 1 SOC analyst, and did that for a year. And when it came to the end of that year, they were really quite impressed with how I'd performed in that year, bearing in mind I had no practical technical background. So they said, do you want to come back after university? I was like, well, yes, obviously. Went back to uni for 4th year, joined in what was effectively a tier 2 SOC analyst role for a year. Then I was contacted by a recruiter to go and work for a different company as a incident response analyst. So I did that for a year. And then I ended up going back to the first company for a 3rd year, where I worked as a senior security analyst. I had the opportunity to do so many different things in this role. Some of these roles, they can be really quite strict of you do X, Y, Z. But there were just so many opportunities that were given to me to do things that role wouldn't normally do, to help with different teams, to do projects, to do research, to do engineering things. So although, to some people 4 years in industry is really not a lot, the amount of things that I was able to do in those 4 years was ridiculous. Everything from threat intelligence, vulnerability management, forensics, insider investigations, fraud, engineering, automation, just tons and tons of kind of low-level investigations to full-blown incident response engagements. Just lots and lots of stuff was packed into those 4 years. Very difficult. I think one thing that's probably worth mentioning is that I've been doing this for about 6 years now. 4 years of that was actually during full-time employment outside of university. So I've only actually done this full-time probably just under 2 years. As soon as I left university, I went into a role with my placement company. So I went back straight away into a 9-to-5 job. And then I had 3 more years of 9-to-5 industry work while doing this alongside. So uni wasn't an issue, but working full time and doing this was difficult to say the least. Challenging. In the early days when it was just me, I was every single day checking how many users on the website, how much money is coming through in terms of sales. And just seeing that ramp up quite quickly. See one day, okay, we've got 200 users, and then the next day it's 400 users, or it's 1,000 users, and now we're making X amount of money. I think it was quite quick after it started that it took off. So it did kind of start making enough money for me to be able to go, okay, well, I can now bring other people in. It was probably around about 6 months in when it was kind of like, now there's too much workload for me to do by myself. I can't answer all the emails. I can't look at all the payments. I can't just support everybody that's coming into the kind of baby company as it was. And yeah, it was just, when you realize it's now too much work for one person, that's kind of when you go, this is starting to get bigger than a hobby or like a side business. First one was Joshua. He came in. Initially, he was just in the SBT Discord, and I was trying to, I paid for a system so we could host our exams, which was third party. And I needed a way to be able to launch the exams from the website. And obviously I've got no idea how web developers do anything. So I put a message in the Discord community we had at the time, and I said, is anybody here a web developer? I need some help. I can pay you. And Joao said, yeah, I'll help you. Don't worry about the money. Just let me help you. I love what you're doing. When he came in and hooked it all up, and then we could do exams better. And then Trevor, who's now our director of cloud, he came in initially as, I believe, a junior cloud engineer to help us build our own labs internally so that we could replace that third party that was doing the exams for us and bring more practical elements. So it was Joao, who's now our director of web, and Trevor, who's now our director of cloud. They were the first two. I think from a business perspective, no. So I've never had any kind of business mentoring or somebody I can bounce ideas off of up until recently when I started my MBA. But it was a lot of people back when I was working in the SOC after university. There was just a lot of support from them in terms of, because they knew about my dissertation, they knew I was going to do training. So they did support me with that. And then the people in the SOC, they were supporting me on my kind of technical career, but not necessarily growing it into a business. But without that level of support, I wouldn't have gotten to where I was in my normal career to be able to create effective training and understand the gaps and the needs that people want to learn about. So nobody from a business point of view, but a lot of people from a cybersecurity point of view. So there's some people in the SOC kind of that made the biggest difference. Obviously, everybody there helped me in some way or another, but the key people was our director of security operations. He helped a lot. And then the analysts that were more senior to me, they were mentoring me day to day anyway. And obviously with that mentoring, that support is obviously what led me to write Blue Team Level 1, but then also kind of influence Blue Team Level 2 as well. I think one of the best pieces of advice was probably go fast, but go slow at the same time, which it sounds like it doesn't make sense, but it means like you shouldn't wait to do things if you can do them, but at the same time, so you need to act quick so you don't get left behind, but you also need to take it slow and really think about, are they the right things to be doing? So it sounds like it doesn't make sense, but it just means keep pushing forward, but make sure you're pushing the right way and just evaluate what you're doing and make sure it's the right thing to do. I think, yeah, so going back to the SOC days, I think it wasn't just technical skills that the team around me were kind of mentoring me on and kind of helping me with, but it was a lot of soft skills as well, which obviously to start a business is essential. So things like, I know it's quite easy to say, oh, I've got good time management, but actually having to kind of put that into practice, especially in like what was a very technical, fast-paced role. And it was also things like communication. It's easy to talk, right? But when you have to go and speak to people that are at the top of the company and you're quite a few levels down, it's being able to speak with anybody and kind of understanding how you speak to them, because you've got to speak in different ways. If I'm speaking to somebody in the team, I'll speak one way. If I'm speaking to somebody that's exec level, you obviously have to speak differently. And then just things like teamwork. You need to be able to work in a team almost wherever you are. And obviously that was one of the things that really helped business in the early days, is that there was so much kind of cohesion, that the really, really strong teamwork, which was what we needed to start a business with such a small amount of people. I think I was very lucky with, when I was in the SOC, the leadership we had were very technical, and they were very, just trying to think what the best way to word this is that they were very supportive, right? It wasn't like I would never hear from my manager, my director, whoever, is they were always very involved, and they would always bring you into things rather than exclude you. So like, even I might not have necessarily need to be there, but I could be in a meeting with like the CISO and all these other kind of bigwigs that they gave me a lot of opportunities to see what it was like working in a big company that they didn't have to. So they really helped a lot by just bringing me in, making sure I'm involved, giving me the opportunity to do things proactively. So obviously, you know, I had my job spec, do X, Y, Z, but I could go to them and be like, what if we did Q? And they would, obviously, provided it was relevant and it made sense, they would let me run with that and kind of just demonstrate the outcome of it. And I think that's the thing that we do at SBT, is that anybody can kind of pitch an idea. And sometimes those ideas might not be aligned with what we're doing, and that's fine. But there's been a lot of really cool ideas we've had here that people have brought up themselves, and then we've done them and they've worked out really well. So I think it's kind of just letting people come to you with ideas rather than always having to be the person telling them what to do. I think the main thing is I'm no longer in a garden shed, as you can probably tell. Those early days, like 90% of my work was done just in a garage, sat with like 3 screens, still at work. So it's a lot nicer now because we actually have an office that I can try and work from. Obviously, there's a lot more people. The early days, it was myself for a year, then it was 3 of us for a little while. Obviously now with 50 people, it's very different. We have people for kind of all the different roles we need. So there's a lot less wearing many hats. Whereas now we have departments and teams that do those, and they do it a lot better than I do. So that's a big benefit. We have a ton more students. So back then we're talking maybe a couple of thousand students, and now we're talking like 120,000. No corporate customers. Now I think there's like 600 or 700 corporate customers, including some of the biggest companies on the planet. And we're just able to do a lot more now. Back in the day, it took me, I think, 6 or 7 months to write level 1, which was fine. It's the first product. But now there's so many gaps that we still see in the market that we are creating content for. So we can just do a lot more of that in parallel, and we can get it in front of people quicker and better. I think because we had people all over the world, obviously we still do, but this was back when we were building the team, is when we had our first ever, what we call internally Global Connect. So it's kind of the annual company event where we all come together. We did the first one of those a couple years ago in London. So many people just, like, it was so weird seeing them on Teams calls and then seeing them in person in London. You know, when none of them have flied, and somebody fly from Australia, just like a 24-hour trip. People come from Portugal, from Egypt. And I think that's kind of when I realized this is actually real. This is actually happening. And I think at that point, there was only like maybe 15 or 20 of us. And obviously, you know, we allow people to bring partners. Some of the people that were with us weren't even employees, but it was just like, we are together in London. This is real. These are real people. We're a real team. So that's really one of my most favorite milestones. One more would probably be this, right? Again, like the office, because it's all well and good working from home, working remote, you're on Teams, you're on Slack, but actually having a physical premises in central London that we can go to, branded, it's our space to work. We can bring customers here, we can bring contractors, suppliers here. This is what makes it feel very real, is this. I think probably the biggest challenge, but the thing that probably makes it the most fun, although it is stressful, is being at the scale that we are now, where I don't purely do CEO things. There are other things I have to do. So there's still a few hats on my head, but by doing this kind of stuff, I get exposed to it, which I normally wouldn't, right? So if we were a very mature, structured company and I was the CEO, I would do CEO duties. But because of how we are, and obviously things are getting more mature every single day, I still get involved in things to do with product and content and finance and things like that. And it's really interesting to see how everything fits together. That's probably the hardest thing, is still doing more than I necessarily should, but we are getting there. Very busy is probably the overview, right? Because although the job was 9 to 5, sometimes the days would go on longer. Sometimes you'd finish at 5:30. Sometimes we might be doing instant response and we stay on a bit later or into the evening. But obviously, as you can imagine, with a 9 to 5 job, that meant that I only really had the evenings and the weekends to do SBT stuff. Trying to have a social life while working evenings and weekends doesn't really work. So it sounds dramatic, but it was quite a lot of sacrifice in the sense that I would work all day in what is typically quite an intense job, to then log off at 5, half 5, whatever it was, and then open up my own laptop to start working on SBT stuff. So it was a lot of work for those 3 years, but because it was so interesting, it kind of just kept me going, and I was so motivated and driven, is that it didn't feel like working 2 jobs. It felt more like working 1 job and then going through a hobby that's also a job. So it was just a lot of time, a lot of work. I think because we have such a passionate, engaged and active audience, is that it has really made kind of SBT quite community centric. So even from the early days, because we were born from a community, we already had those people that have been there since the start, is that by seeing how they interacted with me, how they interacted with the company itself, is that they showed that they want a training company that kind of cares about them, engages with them. I think they've kind of kept it like that, because there's a lot of different routes that we could have gone in the past, where maybe we tried to make more money, so we go down this route, or we try to focus purely on corporate customers, we go down this route. Both of which, kind of would have broken apart this community, which has been at the heart of SBT since it started, or even before. I think the community has been pivotal in ensuring that what we do, we're always thinking about what's best for the community, the industry, and people, rather than our bank account. Obviously, in the early days, like I said, there was no practical hands-on training. So obviously, from a product point of view, we were the first people to do practical lab-based training and a practical lab-based assessment. So that's what set us apart in the early days in terms of what we offer. I think what sets us apart in terms of kind of company culture is, although we're not really a startup anymore, we want to continue the things that make startups good. So things like the workplace environment, the benefits, the social activities. We want to keep doing that while we mature out of a startup. And then I think that the community is so supportive and so engaged that that's really valuable to us. And that's kind of part of what makes us great, is that if you come and study with us, you're not just getting the offerings that we provide, but you're also getting the community that's wrapped around us. You can engage with them, learn from them, ask questions, and lots more. So obviously no background in business, it's all been in cybersecurity. It was getting to the point where I was running a business, it worked, it was profitable, we were doing everything right, but I really wanted to just understand more about business and how to do it better. I thought I would benefit from actual formal education around business. So I applied for a Masters of Business Administration, an MBA, with Imperial College here in London. They accepted me. And I think that as of right now, I am about 6 months into what will be a 24-month program. But even just completing these first 2 terms of the MBA, there's so much stuff that either I did fortunately already know, but it kind of just built upon it and understood it better, or stuff that I had never come across before, which a lot of it was immediately applicable back here at SBT. So already feeling the benefit. Still a long time to go. Before you ask me, yes, it is hard to manage working with the MBA, but so far so good. And yeah, I'm just interested to do the rest of it and then come out the end of it. We've got a lot in the works that we're really excited to, when we're ready, to be able to talk about it and show what we've built. 2025 for us was quite a seemingly quiet year, but that's because we were growing the company internally. I think we've doubled in headcount, and we've just been building, getting ready for the future, essentially. There's a lot coming, there's a lot changing, but it's all good, and it's all for the benefit of our community, our audience, and our customers. It's just, yeah, when we're ready, we'll be able to share more about that. But lots of stuff happening, and we're still, as a company, just growing, maturing, more people in, more roles that we need filled, and just making sure that we're supporting the growth that we're seeing. I think what has been our core platform for the past, 3 years now, we've had SBT e-learning, which is obviously the successor to what used to be the old WordPress site back in the day. And I'm really excited for us to revamp that, and it was already more modern than what we used to have. With platforms like this, they need to constantly be updated and just improved. And now that we've got some more teams within the company, we spent a lot of time thinking about how we can improve what is our core platform. And we've got some really cool things that are in the works. It's quite interesting from a business point of view. You don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak, right? So if we only ever focused on training and then something happens to the industry, it doesn't give us much other ways to move it, right? So we want to branch out and do more things, and we've looked at that. And sometimes it's a case of, here's something really cool that we would like to do, but now's not the right time, or we don't have the right people or the right resources. So for now, we are staying true to training. We do want to branch out and do more things related to talent, because that in itself is an ecosystem. So, people join a company, they get trained with us, help them in their next stage of their career. We will do more than just training in the future. I think we're definitely already up there, but I really want us to become the one-stop shop for cybersecurity training. And that's not just what we've done historically, so Blue Team, but things like offensive training and risk training and just everything else that comes under cybersecurity. To be this one-stop shop, it means that we need to have everything that anybody would want to look for. So there's a lot for us to build, but we want to be the cybersecurity training company, not one of the top, just the cybersecurity training company. I think from my journey especially, it's you need to be able to adapt very, very quickly, because it changes every single day. It's one of those jobs where you will never know everything. And I think one of the issues that I had was when I started, and I was young and fairly naive, was that I wanted to learn everything. So when I joined the SOC, I wanted to learn everything about Red Team and then everything about Blue Team. And it was just, it's not possible to have such deep knowledge in all these different areas. So I think it's really good to generalize at the start, but at some point you need to try and figure out what is it you're good at or what is it you're interested in, and then specialize in that, because you're going to find it easier to find more specialist roles. They're going to have, better progression and better compensation. So start wide, but as you get on, just narrow further and further in. And I was very lucky to get my placement year in the SOC, very lucky, because jobs like that just don't come up anymore. So also you need to have persistence. You're not going to apply for a job and get it straight away. You just need to keep going, keep improving yourself. So, play on different platforms that you can use for practicing your skills, write blogs, build your own home lab, do training, do research. Just all of these things will make you more attractive, more likely to get in. And then they're also going to set you apart once you are in, when you're looking at progressing upwards. So determination and keep it broad, but then specialize over time. I think it would have to be is that nobody is expecting you to be really, really good from day one. In some situations, it's okay to make mistakes. Obviously, I think with the line of work I was in, is mistakes can be damaging, but we're also human. You will make mistakes. And it's just making sure that you learn from those mistakes, don't repeat them, obviously, and persevering through them. So there were some silly mistakes that I made in the first year of my career, And I thought the world was going to end. They'd fire me. I'd be gone. I wouldn't be where I am today. But everybody makes mistakes. Some days are really, really hard, but you just need to keep pushing through and just not lose focus. I would say be prepared. It's not easy. It will probably take up a lot of your time, probably most of your time. But at least from my experience, it's been so incredibly rewarding that it was worth kind of all of those late nights, weekends, no holidays. So if you have an idea and it's good enough and you can run with it, definitely do it. It might be worth trying to get some support. So like obviously I mentioned, I haven't had any mentoring, but maybe if I had back then, I've been in a completely different place now. You know, the company would be bigger, I'll be doing better things. So if you have an idea and it's good, people want it, go for it, because we need more people that want to do something different, right? Rather than just working, they have an idea and they go, yeah, don't worry about it. Somebody else will do it, or I'm too scared to do it. Definitely do it, but be prepared. It's going to be a long, hard journey, but rewarding at the end.